Welcome to the Nail Tech Society podcast, where we cut through the noise of the nail industry and finally make things make sense. I'm Melanie Lewandon. Let's get into it. Well, hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Nail Tech Society. Been really busy recently. I've come back off holiday. And I don't know about you guys, you come back off holiday and you think you're going to be all refreshed and feeling marvellous, and then suddenly it hits you, you've shut your laptop for 2 weeks, you've not really done much for 2 weeks, and the to-do list is building and mounting. And I'm also the kind of person that when I'm on holiday, I'll lie on my sunbed, I'll have all of these amazing ideas and I'll want to get them done as soon as I get home, and I just flood myself with stuff. So in the last few weeks, I've reached a point of coming back off holiday, but subsequently burning out again. But on that note, I have been unwell. So it's been a little bit tricky the last few weeks. I've been suffering a little bit with some extreme tiredness, which is to do with my hormones and my thyroid levels. But hopefully that is all getting sorted again now. So what are we going to talk about on today's episode? Well, firstly, the last episode I did infill and rebalance, and I wanted to talk a little bit on this episode about the apex, because there is lots and lots of information about the apex, and I think if you understand the apex, you will understand nail structure. It isn't as simple as putting a large bead of product on the nail, specifically gel, turning it upside down, allowing it to run to that point and letting the nail turn back, settle for a second, pop it in the lamp. It's better than nothing, but that isn't truly understanding an apex. So today I am going to try and explain the apex to you. I'm not going to tell you how to put it on your nail. It will help you understand why we do it, and it will hopefully help you understand where it goes and why it goes there. So you'll kind of a little bit more paying attention to it when you come to do your next few sets. I want you to really kind of have a look and pay attention to that. So what is the apex? So it is the highest point of a nail or an enhancement. When you look from the side, it's the highest point. Generally, it's the highest point, whether it's acrylic, hard gel, whatever system you're using. It's the thickest part of the nail. So it's where the product is at its thickest. And because of that, it gives you the structure and the strength needed in that nail. So if you look at it from the side profile, nails should not be flat like a ruler. It should have a subtle arch to it. This is a traditional apex, and we're going to cover a hidden apex later on. So now at this moment, I'm talking about what we would consider a traditional apex. So turn the nail to the side. If your nail is flat like a ruler, then it's going to have no strength at all. It should have a subtle arch to it. There should be a high point. That is your apex. So it matters for a few reasons. Why does it matter? So number one is strength. A flat, thin nail has no structural support at all. So every time your client goes about their daily business, opening jars, tapping their nails, typing on keyboard, the product, the nail is going to flex because there isn't anything there to stop it flexing. So the flat product will flex, and when it flexes, the product isn't indestructible, and if it's thin, it will crack. I also want you to look at this in another way. If you look at your natural nail without product on and push down on the tip, you'll see a white patch appear on your nail. This white patch is where the force is exerted when you put force on the nail. Generally, this is where we need the product. That area is what is going to receive the most force. It's really quite technical. Well, it is very technical if you go really deep into apex and strength. And also, if you took like a piece of thin plastic and you bent it, you would see like a white cloudy line appear. That's exactly where the force is exerted when you're bending that plastic. And it's the same with nails. Wherever that force is going to be exerted when the client's using the nails every day, that's where we need to provide that extra strength. Number 2, it protects against lifting and breaks. So the apex needs to sit at the nail stress point, as I've just said, which is usually around the centre of the nail bed. Again, there are caveats to that, or maybe just behind the centre of the nail bed towards the cuticle, but not on the cuticle. I'll explain again in a second. That's the area that's most under pressure day to day. As the nail gets longer, it will change, and I'll explain that in a second. So you're reinforcing that nail exactly where it needs it, not just to look pretty. It's not just a word. It's not just a word that we use. It's actually there for a very specific reason. And number 3, this is important. It protects your natural nail underneath. So a good apex will spread out any force and pressure evenly across the whole nail. So the natural nail isn't taking all the impact every day. So it's actually the product that strengthens the natural nail, but absorbs that pressure every day. And also it looks better. Number 4, it looks better. So a nice apex, whether you choose a traditional apex or a hidden apex, which I'll talk about later, it gives you a nice look. No apex and you just get this flat, unnatural slab looked nail that doesn't look pleasing to the eye. And it's also worth noting that apex position, so where your apex is, will change in height and length depending on how long the nail is or how long your extension is. It will slightly change, this is why this podcast, I'm not going to say you need to, when you do your nails, you need to put your apex here, because it's going to depend on the length of nail that you're doing. So on a shorter nail, the stress point is closer to the centre of the nail bed. So it's roughly where your apex needs to sit, but it's not going to be a huge bump. It's going to be carefully placed, and normally, generally, when nails are shorter, it is very delicate and gradual. And the longer it gets, kind of the higher that apex point becomes. This is because as the nail grows out and as you've got a longer nail, the free edge is carrying more leverage. So I want you to think of it as like a long lever arm. So more weight and pressure is pulling on that extension. So I want you to imagine that you've got a seesaw. Somebody sits on the end of that seesaw and the other end goes up in the air. So if you imagine somebody sitting on the end of your nail, that is kind of what it's doing, and it's pulling on the nail bed. So it's putting a lot of pressure on the nail bed. So the product needs to be evenly balanced from cuticle to tip, and the apex be in the correct place in order for that nail to stay and for there to be minimal liftings. The longer the nail, the further back along the nail, the apex is needed to counterbalance. So if you've got somebody, for instance, you've got a heavy free edge, imagine that's one side of your seesaw, the other side of your seesaw sat in the air. If you sat somebody in the middle of that seesaw, if we imagine that person's the apex, the end of the seesaw isn't going to move because you've sat them in the middle. And if you sit them a little bit further, not quite on the other end of the seesaw, but like halfway towards the end of the seesaw, it will counterbalance it a bit and start evening out that weight, but it won't be fully there. So I hope that seesaw, picture that seesaw in your mind, and that will help you understand why we need to balance that nail out. And if you keep placing the apex in the same spot, regardless of length, you'll end up with longer extensions that aren't supported, and that's when you'll see snapping or the whole enhancement flexing at the stress point, and we'll talk about the stress point in a second, because there's nothing reinforcing it at all. It's just kind of free flowing. So just a little about the stress point. The way I look at a stress point is when you look at your natural nail, your smile line, where it starts from one side to where it starts on the other side, draw a line across. That is your stress point. So when you push down on a natural nail, it will almost bend across that stress point from where the growth points start. And again, I will say again, the growth points are where the natural smile line starts, where your nail stops becoming attached at the side wall and starts becoming your free edge. That is called a growth point. So that line across there also needs to be fully supported. We need to have some support there. So let's look at some common mistakes that are made when apexes are being placed. So an apex that's too far forward isn't going to put support on that stress area. So you're going to get some lifting, you're going to get some cracking, the nail is going to look really weird. So it's going to look a very weird shape. If it's more towards the free edge, it's going to look a really weird shape. And it isn't going to give you any structural stability at all. There's no support at all where the stress actually is on that apex area and on those stress points. There's absolutely no support there. If it's too far back towards the cuticle, because the lanula is there, the lanula is a really soft area. So anything that's thick or hard and applied thickly over that area is literally going to lift straight away. It doesn't matter how good you are, it is going to lift if the product is too thick at the cuticle area. There shouldn't be a bump at the back. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to cause, like I say, lots and lots of lifting down at that cuticle area, and it's not going to support any length at all. And then we have flat as a pancake. Again, as I said earlier, look at the nail from the side and it is totally flat. It's not going to last. It's going to have no strength, structure and support. The only way it might last is if the nail is literally down to the quick, as we'd say, down to the hypernychium, a really short nail. And again, it's going to lift at the free edge because obviously a shorter nail doesn't need as much product. So it's really a huge minefield, and I would really advise you to go away and research apexes. There's lots and lots of different books out there and things that you can look at, and I will link those in the show notes so you can go and see those, because I think understanding the apex is what will help you start understanding your lifting issues and why your clients' nails aren't lasting. And also it will also make you understand why you can't use a soft builder gel on a longer nail, because the product is too soft. So the longer the nail gets, you know that seesaw I talked about earlier, the product is too bendy and flexible. Even when it's piled on thick, it's still going to be soft, and it will just make the nail look thick and bulky. It doesn't work. So obviously the longer the nail, the harder the product then you need to go to. So hard gel, acrygel, acrylic, those kinds of products. So apexes are super important, and I want you to remember that. And now I come to the part where we talk about the hidden apex. This is something that is coming up online a lot now. What people are doing, mainly using hard gel, harder products, but this hidden apex is making a very, very snowbally appearance, and it's there a lot. Personally, I absolutely love it. I'm doing this on my own nails at the moment with hard gel. I never keep nails on. I am terrible. I have had my nails on now and I've been infilling them for 5 months, and they are perfect and they don't get any lifting, any cracking, and I use the hidden apex. So traditionally, as I said before, the apex is the highest point that you see when you look from the side. So you can like feel the ridge. It's like a little bump in the nail if you run the finger across the top. And some, you know, it's there, and that's good. For a soft gel, it's really, really good. But moving to kind of a harder product and looking at the structures kind of differently, the hidden apex, so you're building the same support, the same structural support, but you're moving it to another area. You're not making that area thick and bulky, but there are other things that you have to do alongside it. So let me try and simplify this for you. So I look at the hidden apex as if you look at your finger from the side, most fingers dip down slightly. Okay. So what I do to create a hidden apex with my hard gel is I build the front of my nail, the free edge, I build it thicker so that it's parallel. The upper arch is parallel. So it rises to a really small apex in the back third of the nail where we should normally have an apex starting. But it's very, very thin. It's not high, it's not a bump. It kind of rises gently. And then the upper arch, that top line, comes out straight. So I have to build a little bit more product up at the front to make that happen. And looking from the top of the finger, I imagine a circle in the back third of the nail where the apex is traditionally placed. And then I draw 2 lines from that circle to my growth points either side, 2 diagonal lines. That whole space there that I've created at the front of the nail, that is where I will put my product. It's a lot more complicated than this, but I'm just trying to explain it simply. So running out like a triangle from the traditional apex. Then I will turn my nail over and I will file from underneath, making that free edge the correct thickness. My product is the same thickness all the way over the free edge. It's covering those stress points. It's graduating down to where the product has slightly risen from the cuticle area and forms a really nice, neat parallel line. It is a technique that keeps practicing. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's only been in the last couple of years that I've started using this hidden apex technique. And again, I'm going to be really honest with you, I don't use it on everybody. It depends what I'm doing. And it is really lovely and it does look really natural. And obviously hard gel is great to use because you don't need thickness with hard gel. You just need the product in the right places to support the stress that the nail receives. You just got to make sure that stress area, and if you're doing a hidden apex, that front area is covered. Now I am going to say, and I'm probably going to get myself into trouble here, I learned hard gel with crystal nails many years ago. The hidden apex wasn't a thing then. And I've always done my hard gel with a traditional apex and it works. I don't have a problem with it. And it also, but I do make sure that my stress area, that point from growth point to growth point, I also make sure that area is covered. You will have problems with hard gel if your side walls are too thin, if the growth point areas aren't covered, if your cuticle area is too thick. You're going to have masses of product with hard gel. But if it's all applied correctly, then you can use that kind of traditional apex. As I've said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and up until the last couple of years, I've been using a traditional apex system with my hard gel, and I've never had an issue, and my clients have never had an issue. But I do like the look of the hidden apex. It does look really nice. So if that's something you want to go and learn it, because it's really, really nice. I personally wouldn't recommend doing your hidden apex with a soft builder gel because it's too flexible and you can't get that crisp look, and it's not hard enough to support the thinner structure, the thinner structural needs of the hidden apex. So anything hard, have a go with, but don't, with your soft builder gel, that lends itself better to a more traditional apex, that lovely rise and fall that we get, that slow rise from the cuticle up to the peak of the apex. And then, as I've said before, without overcomplicating it, it's not as easy as that. It depends, your highest point of your nail depends on how long your nail is. And if I would suggest you get some refresher training, some new training, if you want to learn a little bit more about that. It's far too much for a podcast. It just takes a lot more skill and a lot more precise filing with the hidden apex, because you're keeping those structural benefits while kind of disguising it almost. So it does take a lot of work. So done badly, it can look awful, and you'll have nails snapping all over the place. But done well, it can give that beautiful premium feel. And I want to say again, and I've said it before, it doesn't matter what product you are using, it shouldn't be thick, but the apex and the structure should be in the correct place to give it the balance and the strength. But the rest of the nail should look sleek and beautiful. And again, that takes practice and time. So you will see the term hidden apex popping up in the industry, or sometimes people call it a soft apex. Either way, I hope I've kind of explained it. Again, for those that are listening that are masters in this, I am trying to explain to a new student who is confused about the whole thing, a distinct difference between the two, but I understand that there is a lot more to it than that. So a little analogy that I use with my students, just to go back to apex again and what it means. Take a flat sheet of paper and hold it out. It flops. It flops straight down because there is no structure, there is nothing there. Now curve it slightly and suddenly it holds itself up. And it's the same principle. The curve is doing the same job as your apex does on that nail. It gives it strength. So the next time you're doing a set of nails, I don't just want you to think about the product. I want you to think where your apex is landing. Where are you putting the bulk of your product? Are you putting too much on? Too much product, again, if you're using an opaque builder gel, and I discussed this on some other podcasts about gel and is it curing and things like that, but if you're building a really thick apex with a load of gel, that product is not going to cure from top to bottom and you're going to get pocket lifting. So think about how much product you're putting on. How high is the apex? Does it need to be that high for the length of nail you're doing? Have a little look at it. Does it look aesthetically pleasing? Are you shifting that apex with length? Are you changing that product with length? Changing the weight? Is your client a better fit for a harder gel with a more hidden apex? All of these things are what prescriptive manicuring and being a nail technician is all about. It's all about learning. Get the placement right of your apex, get the height right, get those stress points covered, that growth point to growth point, imagine that line across. You'll get fewer breaks, fewer clients coming back, and much better looking nails. And I'm going to end that episode there because I could go on forever, but I'm not going to. And I hope this helped in some ways. And please share my podcast out with others. The only way that I can show up in front of nail technicians just like you is if you shout about this podcast from the rooftops, rate the podcast, comment on the podcast. All of these things are going to help me to build this into the most amazing community and to be a huge benefit for the industry. Before I go, I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'm actually going to be having my first guest on the next episode. And I'm so excited because I've never had a guest on. And it's actually going to be a video because we did it over Zoom and you can see us talking. And we're going to be talking about pricing yourself in the industry, how to get clients, how to keep clients. And my special guest isn't actually in the UK. She is elsewhere. So we're going to be talking about the differences between the way we work in our respective countries and how it differs or how it's very alike. So I think you're really going to enjoy that podcast. So remember, in order to get alerts for when the next podcast is airing, you need to follow me on that. I am going to say goodbye because I feel like my voice is going today. So I'm gonna go and I'll see you next time, Ducky.